Ladies and gentlemen, we've got two short clips to start today's show, starting with a classic and then moving on to one that's going to have a little more to do with today's Mark Lynch.
We were born and raised in New York, and we want everyone here to stay in New York. You don't get to come from outside and then tell everyone else.
Okay, I think let me get this.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
All right, people, hold on one second. Let me bring this up here because we seem to be running two cameras at the same time. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs. There was a short clip. I wanted to start with that one just as a matter of humor, but then I was going to also start with the clip of Lindsey Graham because we're going to talk about Lindsey Graham just a little bit today because we're talking about a man who's running to dethrone, a man who's colloquially, humorously been referred to as Lady Lindsay, war whore Lady Lindsay. But I wanted to play this one.
To all the anti-Seminites, to all the isolationists, I don't believe. Forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. I will be with Israel to our dying day. They're the best ally we could hope for. To all the anti-Seminites.
Now, admittedly, it's a short clip. Someone would argue it's taken out of context, but it's going to be the subject matter of the discussion today. We are live across all platforms exceptionally today because I want this one to get out there. I've been watching podcasts of Mark Lynch for the better part of the day, and we're going to discuss a number of very important things, but one of which is America First. What does it mean now? Now, before we even get into today's show, we got to thank the sponsor, which is Rumble Wallet. And one of the issues that we're going to talk about today is going to be financial freedom, among food freedom and medical freedom and the like. Censorship as well, because as you know, it's back on the front, people. Censorship is back and it's happening everywhere. Platforms are controlling narratives, pushing the stuff they want us to see. We need to fight back, and Rumble is the only company that has really stood the test of time and principle through its CEO, Chris Pavlovski. On one side, Rumble is challenging big tech censorship. Now, on the other side, they've introduced something that will give us protection from big banks shutting us off, as we've seen in Canada. Banks can shut you down, shut you out overnight with no due process whatsoever. That's why Rumble launched the Rumble Wallet, a wallet nobody can cancel, nobody can take away from you. You can instantly tip creators. You can invest in crypto at your risks and peril if you so choose. No middlemen taking the cuts. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money, not a bank, not the government, and not a big tech company. Even Rumble can't even touch it. Don't lose your seed password. It's the most important thing out there. It's yours, only yours. You can invest in USAT. You can invest in XAUT, which is a digital-backed, gold-backed currency, digital currency. It's amazing. It's the only wallet to buy and save, but it allows you also to tip your favorite creators. I'll show you how to do it later, but you already know how to do it. Go to that tip button and either invest, get some financial freedom, and download the app. It's Rumble Wallet. You go to wallet.rumble.com and get some freedom today. Rumble.wallet.com. And links in the description, and thank them very much. Now, we're going to get into this. And when Mark Lynch is ready, he can pop into the stream and we're going to get into the discussion. Robert was supposed to join, but apparently might have had something of a client-based emergency. And he'll hopefully make it late. But if he doesn't, don't worry about it. I have a long list of questions. We've got subject matter to discuss. And I'll invite Mark, if you can hear me, activate camera, activate microphone, and come on into the stream. And everyone who's watching on vivupbarneslaw.locals.com, get your questions in. We're going to get to all of them. Mr. Lynch, thank you very much for doing this. This is, I've been, not in a black-pilled state of mind, but, I had on yesterday a veteran who's a farmer in Florida and, asking him what he thinks of what's going on in the world. And he says at some point, you got to start local and you got to start making changes locally. And we can get enraged about the global state of affairs, but you got to start changing it at home, which is exactly what you're trying to do. For those who don't know who you are, who are meeting you for the first time, 30,000-foot overview before we start getting into detail.
Yes, thank you for having me, David. I'm a lifelong South Carolinian, born in Greenville. I'm Mark Lynch, running for United States Senate to dethrone, like you said, Lindsey Graham. And I'm a businessman. I took over my father's business, bought into it, and took it over back in 1985. We've grown the business 35 times, debt-free, personally and corporately. And our business has grown from 5 employees to 110. We used to start out, we were working in a 3,200 square foot facility. Now we're in 132,000 square foot. God's at the center of our business, just like he is in this campaign. He's the owner of the campaign. And we're bringing back God first. That's the only way we can make America great again, the way our forefathers designed this country with God, divinely inspired when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And our country will only run in a moralistic society under our Constitution the way it's written. We got to get back to that. That'll make America great again automatically. So he's the owner of our campaign, and we are thrilled with what's happening. People are accepting me, and we're winning with our platform all over the state. I got into this basically back in 2014 when I met a gentleman named John Guandolo, who was a Marine commander for 15 years. He was hired on to the FBI to be the head of the anti-terrorism division after 9/11. He worked closely with Phil Haney, who was the director of Homeland Security, and he was murdered after Obama pushed him out and purged all the records that he had worked on about the Islamic infiltration into the country. And I got involved with John and became the chairman of his board with a new organization he formed called Understanding the Threat, so he could get the message out how to vanquish the enemies and bring America back on the offensive where it belongs. And we started training police, sheriffs, SLED agents, FBI agents locally. And like he said, you started the show off with, it's about getting back the grassroots and building up from the local level, because he said everything in Congress is infiltrated. Our Homeland Security is, the military is, and we've got to make sure we keep true conservative sheriffs in our communities and pastors to take this country back. And so we started training people. We started educating the public about that. And back then, people thought we had 8 heads when we talked about the stuff we were sharing about what's going on with the communists working cooperatively with the terrorists in this country. And today they understand that. Now we get questions when we speak across the state. What are we going to do about the sleeper cells in America? You know, Lindsey Graham has been focused on everything else in the world, trying to get World War III started, like he's, you know, speaking for President Trump and Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth, and he was doing that in the Ukraine. And finally, Trump shut him up and said, you better watch out what you're saying over there. He was trying to promote war while President Trump was talking peace between Putin and Zelensky. But we know Lindsey's nickname is a warmonger, one of many of his nicknames.
That's the polite one. We call him Lady Lindsay the War Whore on our channel. But I know you have another term, which is a traitor, and which is a term I sort of use. I use more exclusively, but you sincerely believe that the man is a traitor to the country.
Well, he swore an oath to defend against foreign or domestic enemies. And when you're for giving amnesty to all illegal aliens, what is that? We don't know who's in this country. We know now they're talking about it. And Lindsey's for stopping sanctuary cities. He helped create those, you know. And he sent out a direct mail piece last year in the spring about this time that he was so proud to be a part of the Lake and Riley Act. That's just a complete lie. And I've told everybody publicly, I'll fly Lindsey, and we'll go to the Riley home, and I want to hear him talk to the father of that girl that was abused and beaten and killed and raped by illegal aliens in this country that he was allowing to come in here.
You know, before we even get there, because we're going to get into a lot of policy, your history, your background, you're born and raised in South Carolina. You took over, or you got into and expanded your father's business. It's Lynch Appliances, and now it's how many people does it employ?
110.
110, and from what I understand, I don't. You're an ordained deacon, and you give. I don't know if it's called Bible studies, but you do prayer groups or study sessions every Tuesday and Thursday at the Enterprise.
Yes, we have a morning session where we preach the gospel. We have 2 pastors on staff. I used to do it years ago, but they got tired of hearing from me, and they'll hear the same thing and take it in if somebody else says it. So I get that. So we have 2 flavors of pastors, and probably 95% of the people come in on those days, and we do it twice a week. When we first started out years ago, once a week didn't allow the other people that were off on that day to hear the message. So we give 2 messages, but they're 2 separate, different messages from 2 pastors, 2 flavors. And, our people are our greatest assets. We have to invest in them. We have to sell a washing machine or a sofa, but we need to make sure everybody knows Jesus. That's what we're commanded to do.
It's beautiful, and there's no better way to create even just from a purely economic perspective, team cohesion than what you're doing. It's beautiful. It creates family, and it creates a team in business and in spirit, which is magnificent. But now, successful businessmen, and then oftentimes people say, who in their right mind willingly decides to get into politics, other than those who have been lifelong politicians and have made their wealth through the politics? What was the you touched on it, but what was your turning point or your aha moment where you say, I have to do this and veer away from this wonderful business into a world of disgusting politics?
Well, meeting John Guandolo with understanding the threat and hearing all about the Islamic infiltration, and we spoke to 70 police, SLED agents, FBI agents that night in our chapel where we hosted this event of his. A friend of mine had met him, and we brought him in to speak. The meeting was going to be 6:30 to 8:30. It ended at 1:45 in the morning, and all of our chins were on the ground. We couldn't believe what we were learning, and I was just amazed at that information. I got involved, became the chairman of his board. We started speaking in churches and bringing 600 and 800 people to these educational events, and we started training all of our first responders and police and FBI agents in our city with 7 counties. And that's when I got asked to run for office with the knowledge I had on this subject and the deep state. And I ran for a state Senate race in 2020. I lost by 5%. Our campaign team met and said, we still want to all fight. So we formed an organization called the United Patriots Alliance, and we started fighting bad bills and getting good bills into the state house and getting rid of the bad actors and helping get good people in that were true conservatives. And along the last 4 years in the fight that we've been leading in our state and making a difference in our state house, people said, you need to run again. We don't have anybody. We need a true conservative, a guy that'll hold the line, that won't compromise, that has faith like you have, that will hold to our patriotic principles and help get America back in South Carolina. And we need that. We don't have anybody else to run. And my wife says, Mark, you're the only guy that I know, and it's not because I'm your wife, but you need to run for office. So I answered the call. We talked to consultants, and everybody agreed. I'm a United States Senator. I need to go to Congress and fight for this country and for our state and bring back true America First principles back on the surface again and work on that. Now, so we're in.
No, it's amazing. I mean, and again, before we get into policy, even logistically, what does it take to take on and defeat a Lindsey Graham who, the weird thing is, even if people hate him, he's got name recognition, if only for the wrong reasons. And it's almost like people go to the ballot boxes and they just vote with the name that they know, even if they know they don't like them. What is going into and what is required to defeat someone like Lindsey Graham?
Well, people are looking for a candidate that's viable, that has the financing, the money to back it. My wife and I prayed about this after we spoke to Roger Stone, and he said, Trump will want to see 2 things, your polling and how much skin you have in the game. We prayed about it. We've been debt-free for a long time. We pushed $5 million of our own retirement funds into this Lynch for Senate campaign to start this race. So I want people to hear that, because we're serious about it. And we're not just coming in here hoping we're gonna do this thing, and people know they have a viable candidate in me. So it takes money, and we have enough to present a good fight in this campaign, and we're getting good donations in. They're coming in now. We had one donation company that had to quit us because they were told in Washington they couldn't support us anymore, and we had one of the best donor lists, but that's okay. God's the manager of this campaign, and he owns all the cattle of 1,000 hills, and whatever we need will come in. And we're getting a lot of free press right now, and I want to thank Lindsey Graham for everything he's doing. He's the greatest supporter of our campaign, and my wife wants to thank you. She said, Lindsey, man, he's the gift that keeps on giving. So thank you, Lindsey. We look forward to waking up tomorrow morning and seeing what you're going to give us tomorrow. And he's imploding, you know. He's flushing himself, and it can't stop. And if God's appointing me and removing him, it's over. It's like a bad refrigerator we have in the store or an old TV we bought too many of. When it's outlived its date and the new models are out, you can't pay people to take it. So I don't think money's going to help him in this race.
Now, I was listening to you with Owen Schroyer, and it was from 4 or 5 months ago. And the amazing thing is, like, what a difference 4 or 5 months makes. And you were talking a lot of America first back then, and you know, there has been a lot of discussion now as to what America first means now, because I will argue, and I'm not trying to brainwash people or tell people what they're thinking. My impression is that there's a lot of people right now thinking that what they see on the global scale coming out of the Trump administration is not America first. People are trying to make the argument that it is, in terms of, you know, it's America first to take out the threat of Iran. It's America first to, you know, fight foreign wars has been the argument. In your view, as of today, what is America first? What does it include and what does it not include?
Well, if I go to the U.S. Senate, you know, I work for the American people. That's my employer. And America first means we got to deal with things at home. It's unconstitutional to provide foreign aid to other countries if we're gonna live by the Constitution, right? And we're sovereign. We run our own country. I don't work for Israel. I stand with Israel. My Lord and Savior was a Jew. I have flags of Israel hanging down from our ceiling and Jerusalem in our chapel. If you come by, I'll give you the tour. They've been up there for years, ever since we visited Israel. And so we love Israel. But we make our own decisions over here. And as a businessman running a calculator, we're bankrupt. Some of us wear the debt clocks that are running with $38, $39 trillion and counting. And, you know, this war is costing us $1.5 billion a day, and we're depleting all of our resources. We're barely building back inventory on weapons and missiles and things like that from our military being defunded with Obama and Biden for all those years. And, you know, the biggest thing we've missed while Lindsey's been around going all over the world trying to start World War III, because he loves it. He starts salivating because he's going to make a lot of money through the military-industrial complex of Boeing and Lockheed Martin. They were his biggest contributors in 2020, both donating like 30 and 35 million each to his campaign when he ran against Jamie Harrison. And so he loves to promote war, and he doesn't care about what it causes. And, you know, a lot of people talk about it. And I know Trump's honoring his oath and he's getting information, and we don't have privy to all that. I'm not in the U.S. Senate yet. I don't know all the discussions his intelligence teams bring him with what they find out about Iran. But do they really have, you know, uranium? Do they really have nuclear missiles? We're hearing two stories from the news. So it's hard to understand what we're seeing. I know the polls, we saw a Reuters poll yesterday that came out, and only 27% of Americans support the war. And
yeah, well, you know, I mean, I don't, Mark,
so that says a lot.
Well, according to some polls I've seen, 94% of MAGA support the war, and I'm trying to sensitize people to the idea that you've gotten to the no true Scotsman fallacy, where the only people that now, by the people who support this war, are considered MAGA, support the war. So it's almost definitional.
Right.
I would suggest
we've been teaching since 2014. The enemy's inside our walls. They've walked into this country, thousands of illegal aliens, and it's not just you know, all we ever hear about is drug cartel people and the gangs and some people want the American dream and they should come in here, but they need to come in here after they pass through our immigration laws. But the biggest people that have come in here, the biggest groups of people is terrorists. And they're in here and they've reported to their assigned locations. And now everybody's asking about it. What about the sleeper cells? So we have neglected America first. We've seen a takeover of this country in 2020 with stolen elections. Everything flipped. President Biden used the Patriot Act against our people going to D.C. to express their freedom of speech, and they believe the election was stolen. I do too, and we got locked up for that. People were put in prison for 20-year prison sentences, and thank God Trump got back in. And we all worked hard with the Reawaken America tour and everything everybody did at the local level. And the party didn't elect Trump, the people did. And we've got people now that are very angry. Nobody's getting arrested, and there needs to be retribution for what was done. That was all treasonous acts that were done against our people, and we've got to put people in prison for what they did.
Oh, we're going to get there in a second. I just want to resolve one issue, because I would not suggest you read the chat while we're live, but I like to just keep up to the speed of what's going on. And there are people out there who get initially scared when someone says that, especially Christians who say we support Israel because of the historical religious connections to the country. People ask, and I think I know the answer already, because I think you've publicly pledged not to take AIPAC money. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. I can't be bought, and I'm not going to be controlled by Israel. We're America, and we have sovereignty. We got to run our country, and we don't have the money for a war right now. If Netanyahu called and I was in the U.S. Senate, I'd say, hey, you beat us to the punch. I was going to call you and ask you for some money. Hey, God's hands are on your country. Nobody's going to take y'all over. We've read the book. We need help over here. And so can you help us out? We need some planes. We need ammunition. We need soldiers on the ground taking over these internal terrorists that are inside our walls that we finally built. And we've got to deport all these people and get them out of here. And we got to start with Congress. We've got enemies inside of Congress, Well,
that is where I want to get to eventually, because, the question is how the likes of the Lindsey Grahams, and I want to say the Thunes to a lesser degree, end up seemingly, I won't say controlling the administration, but influencing it. But before we get there, you mentioned retribution, and it's sort of like a dirty word. People hear retribution and they think of something unjust. And I actually, the definition of retribution is something along the lines of proportionate punishment. It's a fancier word for justice. We were promised, or at least, it was the campaign promise of a lot of retribution for January 6th, for the stolen elections, for the Russiagate hoax, for the weaponization of the FBI intelligence, and it doesn't seem like there's been any of that. I know your position on this, but I'll flesh out mine. A lot of us are pointing the finger at Pam Bondi and a feckless or corrupt DOJ, and then others say, well, the buck stops with the president. Where do you attribute the blame? Where do you attribute the problem? And what is your proposed solution if you were to have access to Trump's ear?
Yeah, if I'm in the U.S. Senate, I'll bring Pam Bondi up. If she's our attorney general, when is she going to do her job? She says she had a list February a year ago and talked about it, but here we are still. Everybody's tired of watching the same news story every night and nothing's being done. It's enforce the law, bring back the rule of law. These people need to go through that, be indicted, go to court, let the law play out, and whatever happens, happens. And hopefully the Department of Justice and our Supreme Court judges do the right thing. If they don't, we need to investigate them and see what they're up to or how much money they're being paid to turn their head. And it's all completely obvious, and most people have the proof, and we've seen all these people talking about it, and we've seen the names, and I appreciate the guys in Congress that are fighting to get this done. Those children that were abused on Epstein Island, of all things, and of course we've heard now that people are having satanic rituals, eating their children's flesh that were there, and they have torture videos they produced, and people are confessing to that. So we're getting all the proof has come out. What are we doing with it? Are these people above the law? Or are we worried about throwing somebody under the bus? The truth will do what it does. And if people have committed these crimes, they need to be served justice.
Well, the argument, at least coming out of the Bondi's DOJ and Kash Patel's FBI, is that evidence doesn't exist. The videos that they have are, just CSAM, child sexual abuse material, and that it doesn't exist. And yet, from what I understand, there's been no meaningful request for information from intelligence, but only from the FBI, which now has a 20-year-old file, give or take, corrupt to the core because it was under the guardianship of the Biden corrupt FBI, and we don't know what intelligence connections he has. What do you do to get the information out there, to the extent that it seems that we're not able to get that information out under the tutelage of Pam Bondi?
Yeah, I don't know. I appreciate what Thomas Massey's doing and others that are fighting, and we're allowing in our government, in our country, our government officials are redacting information and hiding it, and they've been sitting on it, like you said, for 20 years. So we don't know how corrupt all that information is now, and where a lot of it's ended up, and it's gone, and it's missing, and nobody wants to talk about it. And the news then moves to the next news story about the war or whatever's going on. Well, we can't forget this, and it goes back to, as far back as Benghazi for me. Hillary and them that ignored Stephen's calls for help. What are we doing? America's tired of it. We're a lawless nation, and we've got to bring back the rule of law in this country and enforce our laws.
This is the issue, because now I was listening to you with Owen. This was 5 months ago, and it was right when Trump, seemingly as the peacetime or the peace president, secured the release of the remaining hostages and the remains of the hostages. And back then, you're like, there's some issues, but this was a success of the president that only he accomplished. And fast forward 5 months, I don't want to, draw a divide between you and the president, because you are America first, and I know you deeply support President Trump. The question is the obvious one: how do you feel about the latest strikes in Iran? And to the extent that it's a stretch to argue that it's America first, who has the influence over the president to get him to do things which are seemingly counterproductive and might make your mission to get elected even more difficult?
Yeah, that's a deep question, and it's a complicated one. And there's many angles that we have to talk about. And number one is, I'm not privy to all the information that the president has at his access, and you're not. And we're all taking all the different news reports and different opinions and different podcasters and information, and we all have a theory or another conspiracy theory about everything. I get asked, was this a constitutional decision to go to war? And according to the Constitution, the way I understand it, I know there's a War Powers Act, but that's for direct threats to America. And I guess we have to define what that is. And so if we see Iran has nuclear capabilities of hitting America with missiles, and they've been a threat to America for years, and for 4 decades we've heard death to America, and we're trying to promote a regime change, and we have proof they have nuclear weapons and enriched uranium where they can create more nuclear missiles, then yeah, I guess we have to do something. The War Powers Act, I believe, says he has to announce to Congress within 48 hours what he's done, and then he still has to run it through and get approval from Congress to make the decision to stay in war if he launched it. But I believe the War Powers Act was only for direct threats on America, and so it's all a definition of who determines what that is. Hey, listen, I like that Trump does what he says, and I know he's about negotiating peace first. I appreciate that through diplomacy when he goes to Kim Jong-un or Putin or whoever it is trying to not have war start. Nobody wants war. That's the last-ditch resort to put our men and women in harm's way. We have the best military in the world and the advantage over any country with our technologies and fighter jets and everything we have. And when we go, we need to support our men and get rid of rules engagement. And, with Obama, they had to call in and ask, hey, we've had another guy shot. Can we fire back yet? If I'm in a digit camo uniform and holding an M4 and I'm in a foreign country and we're at war, I'm not asking anybody's permission. I'm going to stay alive and kill the enemy. And our country better support our men and women. And I know Trump will, and Pete Heggs us in, and he's awesome. And we're building back our standards of a fighting force that you can't deal with. That's what we have to do. So President Trump, I'm proud of him, and he's honoring his oath to defend. And we have a president that countries fear because he means what he says. He'll give you time. Here's 1, 2, third chance. What are you going to do here? Or you're going to pay heavily with the wrong decision. And if we have proof that they have those nuclear missiles and enriched uranium abilities and supplies to build more nuclear weapons, then we have to do something about that. And if we have all that proof, there shouldn't be any problem with Congress agreeing, yes, we make a constitutional decision that what President Trump did was correct. So I applaud the president for that.
No,
now,
sorry, please continue.
But just one more thing. We just, I've heard from a lot of soldiers and read a lot of social media comments everywhere. A lot of our soldiers are not wanting to go fight for Israel. They want to fight for America. So who's been threatened here? We know Iran and all Muslim nations hate Israel. They hate America too. And our country's always stood with Israel, and we have to. But we can't run Israel, and we can't fund all of our, add more debt to our debt column on our balance sheet, funding Israel when we don't have the money to do it. So there's a lot of questions here that it's hard to make a solid stance on with just the limited information we have by a lot of news sources that aren't true, and that they're not getting good information. The public is trying to find the right answer. We all support America. We all support our military, and we've got to remain America first with every decision.
Yeah, the concern that many people have is, not to say everything is like Iraq too, where with WMDs, there's going to be a substantial portion of the population that's going to be skeptical or cynical, even if the government says, yes, we've got the evidence, if only because, the meme of the montage that Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon, that's, 20 years of the montage. But if you had that debate before Congress, at least, it would flesh out the evidence. And even if it's after the fact and say after the damage, it could either ratify the decision or prove those who were skeptical right. What of the concerns that this potentially destabilizes certain parts of the world and then causes more of a refugee influx that's going to impact American immigration, like occurred with Syria, like occurred with Afghanistan?
Right. Well, we've beat the immigration thing to death over the last 10 years, and we've got to hold our rules of immigration, and we're full, and we're trying to get rid of the illegal aliens that we allowed to come in here and walk into this country over the last 10 years. And, we can't take any more right now. We're trying to process the people that are already here. If there's real, true people that want the American dream, if they vet through the immigration process, they can stay in America. But all the terrorists and the drug cartels and people that are killing our children and raping them and bringing fentanyl in and everything, they've got to go. We've got to clean that up first. So this isn't going to be a place for refugees from Iran to come.
Well, here's the question: a tough one. You're going to get it. Are you proposing something of a partial amnesty for law-abiding illegals, or do all illegals ultimately go and reapply? And if you can come back, you can come back.
Go and reapply.
Now,
they have to be maybe if we have a way to expedite the processes for people that we vet that are here, if we can do it in a few days or weeks, we can do with at the level and velocity we can handle. But other than that, they know they're here illegally. They all know it.
Now, I know I know at least as a matter of reported fact, you're America First. You employ local South Carolinians. Can you explain to those who may not fully appreciate the financial interest of big corporations to exploit illegal immigrants? I mean, we've seen it. You know, they say the quiet part out loud every now and again. Jerry Nadler talking about you need illegals to, you know, pick the fruits and vegetables or they're rot in the field. You got Adam Kinzinger talking about the reason why all of those Haitians were in Springfield, Ohio, was because, you know, the big companies needed them. Can you elaborate on the degree to which big corporations exploit illegals for financial benefit?
Yeah, well, I'm playing by the rules, and we have to sign immigration citizenship paperwork when we hire a new employee and report that to the government. So if there's companies breaking the laws, hiring illegals and playing them under the table, that's not doing anybody any favors, and that's against our laws. Why do some big corporations get to utilize illegal aliens and pay them under the table, and they're avoiding paying taxes and everything, and we're all paying for that? It's just a big mess. So everybody needs to be under the same rules. You know, a friend of mine that owns a great restaurant in Greenville, when Tom Homan was coming around and ICE and picking up and deporting illegal aliens, one day he came into work when all that first started, and a lot of his employees weren't there. He and his family were there working. I'm like, where's everybody? They didn't show up for work because they're scared they're going to get arrested and deported. And I said, well, good for you. You need to hire Americans. You know, we go to universities like Clemson University. I'm talking to one of the engineering students. He said, Mr. Lynch, I appreciate your opinions on the border and the building the wall and deporting the illegal aliens, but we have a problem. He said, I'm an engineering student. I graduate next year. I'm competing against students from India. Their country pays their tuition. Those kids live here 9 months a year. They're going to compete with me for the same job, and they'll take the engineering job for half the pay that I deserve with my degree. I've worked hard for it, and I'm not going to get hired. And these people will never assimilate into this country, and I was born here. And so what are you going to do about that? So my stance on that is get rid of H-1B and op visas. We need to hire Americans. That's America first. And I love Trump's position on tariffs. You know, we funded our government up until 1913 with tariffs. That's constitutional. So we can get rid of the federal income tax and bring tariffs back and fund this country with that. And bring back our manufacturing, all the manufacturers that ran to Vietnam and Thailand and China and everywhere to try to be competitive, because we've allowed NAFTA to bring a world economy together, and we put American companies out of business. In our industry, when I was younger in the 70s, we lost all of our American TV manufacturers, like Zenith and RCA and Motorola and Magnavox and Philco, and they became Panasonic and Toshiba and JVC and Hitachi. And American manufacturers and TVs are gone. We lost the textile industry. Greenville used to be the textile capital of the world, and we lost that to China. And it bankrupted our city. We went into a depression because everybody was working at the textile mills. And so the companies that stayed here in America, David, in 2020, they didn't miss a beat. They got behind on production when people found out they had product, because they make everything in America still. The companies that went overseas and bought into all that found out their products were horrible, and a lot of third-generation furniture companies at a high point, when they ran to China and tried to compete that way with lower cost on their employee payrolls, and, you know, hiring China people working in extreme, horrible conditions for horrible pay, they're bankrupt and they're out of business. And we lost a generation of craftsmen. You can't just rehire new furniture people and go put them on the assembly line or put them in a pit to hand make a sofa. They have to be trained a long time to learn that craft.
I say this is not a problem. This is what, I don't say people want to hear. This is what, my understanding, Americans actually want. They want an end to H-1B, because it's just used to exploit foreigners to the detriment of Americans, and there's no reason why there's not a sufficient amount of skilled labor that would require importing people from India on H-1Bs. It sounds like what Trump was campaigning on, and then it seems like something happens when people get into that DC, I would say gulag, because there's other gulags in DC, but that into that DC silo, that they forget about it. And you have Trump, engaging in some unforced errors, like talking about the H-1Bs and we need them because we don't have the skilled labor here. Does something happen? Is there an influence in DC that just overpowers bona fide, genuine America first?
It's, it's just, is somebody paying people to make these decisions? I don't know. There's some reason. President Trump's a good guy. He's a businessman, and he's fighting for America. We see that. He doesn't need to do that job. He's been persecuted. He's been shot at. He's been shot in the ear. There's been several attempts on his life, and he's in there fighting for us every day. I just pray for him. I pray that he gets good information and we get rid of all the bad actors that are still around him so that he's getting the truth. He's trusting and has to trust a lot of his people on the payroll that advise him and give him information. And I just hope he gets the right information. But, I saw Megyn Kelly and a lot of people across the country, and Laura Ingraham, talking about that when he made that comment about we're going to always, let about 600,000 Chinese come into America. And I don't agree with that. Our students are crying out, how am I going to have a future? They're worried about the inflation and the price of housing and all the stuff that's going on. I mean, the gas and diesel prices are going through the roof right now with this war in Iran. And we're making it more complicated, and we're fighting ourselves all the time.
Well, that answered one question as to how you felt about the Chinese student visas, because in addition to it penalizing American students, it's a national security threat, and it's weird. You get frustrated, and then people want to just write Trump off. He does listen to the base, and he does listen to people who put the good information out there. So, and it sounds like you'd be one of the good ones. I know that Robert couldn't make it, and an issue that's near and dear to his heart is food independence, the ability to buy from your local farmers. And just yesterday, I had on an Afghanistan veteran who did 2 tours in Afghanistan, comes to Florida, and is drowning in the red tape bureaucracy of Palm Beach County to operate a small local farm, his own chickens, his own eggs, his own craft meat, honey. What would you do? I mean, what is it like in South Carolina in terms of the ability to buy from local farmers, and what's your position in terms of how to do that and how to facilitate it at a larger scale?
Yeah. Make America healthy again, right? I'm all for that. Growing up, my aunt had an organic farming place, her and her sister did, when people didn't even know what that meant. She would create her own black dirt. She said it's free. We go around and pick up the leaves people rake out of their yard, put it in bags. It's on the street. We just run by and pick it up in the truck. Then they have a big compost pile they create, and it's got big fat worms growing in it. The soil's black for years of putting food waste in there, and it's full of worms. And they would grow a row of corn and grow a row of daffodils because they didn't use fertilizer and they didn't use pesticides or anything. The bugs would go to the flowers and leave the food alone. And we used to go, when my father said we're going to run by bees after church, we were all like, yay, because we're going to eat awesome food. There were tomatoes the size of cantaloupes, cherry red, that tasted like they had a tablespoon of sugar on every slice, and it was just God's sunlight, rain, and black, healthy, fertile soil, nothing added to it. And I don't see a tomato like that anymore. But anyway, we need to get back to that. In South Carolina, there is farming. People are growing food. We have places where we have local butchers. We can go get black Angus beef that's not injected with steroids or chemicals of any kind. And it's really different to eat a hamburger like we used to eat, 40 years ago, or a steak that's real. And we've, how have we gotten here? How have we allowed a company to have a paragraph with 20 lines in it of all these additives and chemicals and dyes and everything that they have to put in this food? And, we're not doing it God's way. We're not turning the soil. People are shipping fruits to us in South Carolina from California. It goes on a truck. It's picked green. It never got the final nutrients into it, and it turns green on the truck and on the shelf in the grocery store, and we're eating roughage. And we wonder why we have a big problem with cancer and all the diseases in this country. And it's time for people to say no. But in Obamacare, there were earmarks put in that 10,000-page document that Pelosi said, just sign it, we can read it later, that we can't do our own farming or fishing, and it's end time stuff where they're going to control the food, and we better be aware of that. We better fight and get all that overturned, because we're going to lose the ability, and they're already paying farmers to burn their fields, get rid of their cattle. We're buying our beef from Argentina, and we're not growing anything in America again. And this is warfare. Again, in 2020, we all saw that. If the president of China wanted to destroy America, he could just say, you know what, we're going to ship you? Nothing. Good luck, America. Because we don't even have our own pharmaceutical made here. We're trusting an enemy to produce our medicine. And
that was
back.
That was one of my biggest red pills of COVID, which is like made in China, made in India. And if you need these medications, you're relying on adversarial nations. Now, but the question is on the farming front, and people want to have the right to go to their local farmer without having to go through FDA regulations that cripple small farms and empower big ag. What do you do? What do you propose to actually have a legislative solution to that problem?
Yeah, remove all that bureaucratic red tape where a farmer can grow food. We get to determine what we eat, not the government. We get to determine our own healthcare choices. That's freedom. You can go to the grocery store and get a pizza with a lot of man-made ingredients in it, or we can make one at home with the flour and the wheat that we grow in our fields, and tomato sauce that we cook from our tomatoes that we grew ourselves, that we know what's in it. Without all the chemicals and everything on it. And that's the rights of every American. The government's gotten too big, and the government works for the people. And we've all allowed it. We've sat back and done nothing. And there's been more and more overreach, and they're controlling everything. And it's time to take it back.
I want to say, like, I don't want to always seem like I'm pitting you against where Trump is at right now on certain issues. But you do definitely seem more America first in terms of certain policies than where this administration is at. We see what's happening to the Amish in Pennsylvania, and we know what is wrong with that and what should be done to make things better. Financial freedom. What's your perspective on being able to go after banks for debanking for political reasons?
Well, I'm all, I hope we can end the Federal Reserve. I'll sure fight to do that. We need to get back to the United States Treasury and stop spending and all, and stop the printing of fiat currency that's not backed by gold and silver again. We need to go back to God's economy and actually have real money. I love what one of the gold and silver companies said years ago. We've kind of misled people, and we want to apologize. Gold and silver has never been an investment. It's just real money. We have gold coins that are $50 face value, and it went up over $5,000. Gold will always buy what it always bought. If you buy gold at a low price and sell it at a high price and go back into cash, you've not done anything. You just trade it back into fiat currency that's not worth anything. It's just toilet paper. You can light your cigarettes with it or start a fire with it.
Well, so the argument for why the U.S. came off the gold standard was that you couldn't back all of the value of the fiat currency that you wanted for international trade, so you had to come off the gold standard in order to facilitate broader international trade, at least with the U.S. dollar. I'm not an economist. What's the argument for how you could do that if you go back to the gold standard?
How you can?
Well, right now there might not be enough gold on Earth to even go back to back the U.S. dollar. So is it now not a problem that can't be solved effectively?
I think there's plenty of gold. Where is it? I know some gold I have, and where I have it, you take possession of them. I don't have a piece of paper that says some bank somewhere has the gold, but that's God's economy, and we have to live under it. It makes us not overspend. If we can all print, the government should just pay, $300 and get Hewlett Packard to send everybody a printer with a software for money. Everybody just print what you need every day.
Well, it's the old meme. If the government can just print money, why the hell are we paying taxes?
Right.
Here's another one, and I think I know your position on it, and it's going to be in contrast a little bit to the Trump administration, and I would say arguably under Bondi, who was Pfizer's counsel during relevant periods of time. You are staunchly opposed to immunity for pharmaceutical companies, or mildly opposed?
Immunity, and what do you mean by that?
In terms of immunizing, the immunization of pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, no. None of our children or grandchildren have ever had a vaccine. And how we could ever even talk about that right now, after all the proof we have with the died suddenly documentaries and all the sudden deaths, and no one is forming clots and everything. When 2020 came, we fought that with everything I could. I had to fight the police. They were trying to come in here and tell me your people aren't wearing masks. I said, we don't have to. That's your opinion. It's not a law. And I don't believe in the mask, and I don't believe in social distancing. If you're going to arrest me, give me that story, arrest me, or leave me alone. I don't have time every day for you to call me and come by the store and say, we got another complaint. And the police officer I know here in the Greenville community said, Mr. Lynch, I agree with you. I'm not wearing the stupid mask either, or taking the clot shot, but we're getting more complaints from your store than any other retailer in Greenville. I said, Eric, if we fall to second place, then you come see me in person. DHEC came in the store, OSHA, and we had to kick them out of the store and tell them, you work for us, and this isn't Russia just yet, and so get out of my store. I don't have time. I don't have an appointment with you today, last time I checked on my calendar. And the immunizations, when I've worked with a good friend of mine that's a chiropractor, and he's also a medical doctor, and he speaks in state conventions from his chiropractic knowledge, medical. There's a time sometimes where, you might need an antibiotic or whatever. But the vaccines, his wife took a polio vaccine and was paralyzed for years until she came out of that the vaccine caused. And so God doesn't make defective bodies when they come out. We got to get all these vaccines. We all have an immune system, and our body knows how to fight off germs. And we knew the second week of COVID that it was all a scamdemic. And we educated our employees. With 110 people here, we're a pretty good test model. Nobody died. Some people caught that year's flu virus, and they stayed home and took a aspirin or some cold medication and rested, and they came back to work and they were fine. And that's what I did. That's what my family does. And in South Carolina, our governor was going to appoint a health czar, Dr. Edward Simmer, a forensic psychiatrist, to be the health czar last year. And we fought that and took hundreds of people to the state house and fought it and won and stopped that confirmation and appointment of Edward Simmer as a health czar, because we're not going to go back through 2020 lockdowns and have people get vaccines. We fought, David, and I had an employee one time in our church service on a Tuesday morning. He said, pray for my dad. He's in intensive care fighting COVID. And I got with Chad. I said, come on right now. We left chapel and I called his father. He knows me well. And I said, Mr. Stanfield, I need to know if you're on remdesivir or not. He said, that's funny you asked me that. My sister's a nurse in Chattanooga, and she told me to get out of the hospital, the same thing you're telling me. And I asked the nurses what I'm on, and they wouldn't tell me. And finally, one of the younger nurses came by and said, I didn't tell you this, but they have you on remdesivir. You need to get out of here, because that drug's Fauci's creation. It's $3,000 a dose. It fills your lungs with fluids, and then you go to a vent, and then you're dead, and the hospital gets a check for $26,000. And we had doctors in South Carolina that led a walkout, and the doctors that had the courage to say no to murdering more patients walked out of the hospital, lost their jobs, spoke at state Senate hearings in Columbia in our state, and testified that we could have gone and gotten a $1 pill of ivermectin and saved these people. And we we have an oath, a Hippocratic oath, to do whatever we can to save these patients, and you're telling us all we can use is remdesivir. And so what was wrong with that picture? You know, and we got Chad's dad out of the hospital. We went to some doctors we know that wrote a prescription for ivermectin, and we had to go out into the country to an old Rexall drugstore for them to fill it. The CVS had ivermectin where we could see it stacked up behind them, and they wouldn't fill the prescription. Is anybody paying attention? You know, we were murdering people with that process, and hospitals were getting paid to do it. And so we've got a lot of problems, and we've got to get good quality people back in government again that'll hold to the truth, because there's so much corruption and all. It makes me sick. I've got to run. I've got to run for office and make a difference and stop this craziness.
Well, I was going to ask, now that we're clear on the pharmaceutical immunity, I presume you hold the same position for government immunity, for the members of government who implemented these policies in the first place? Strip them of government immunity?
Oh, yeah, right. They're not above the law. They've got to be under the same laws we are. I'd love to have the health insurance programs they have. Yeah, no, they.
Look, I'm
criminals.
I'm checking my notes here. It sounds like what Maha was in 2024. It sounds like a lot of, initial Trump policies, even more Trump than that. And I think it's what the people want, not in a listening to the mob sense, in a populist sense. People want their lives and freedoms back. I'm going to get to some of the questions, or I'm going to get to all the questions, but what do you do? What can you do to shrink this blob that is the federal government, that has gotten so bloody big, it just micromanages and micro-governs every aspect of what are intended to be free by, the grace of God citizens? How do you shrink this beast?
Well, if we're going to follow the Constitution, so we have that law and we stand on that and hold steady to that, because we've got several agencies and departments in our government with the government overreach, like the Department of Education. These departments are unconstitutional. Experts we've talked with tell us that if we could close all of these illegal, unconstitutional agencies our government has created all these years, that we would probably bring back close to 80% of the budget again by eliminating these agencies. And, we've got to get back people. My family and everybody I hang out with, we're all homeschooling. And, we need to end property tax. I paid the property tax that was due January 15th, back then, this year. And the property tax on our building and property here was $173,000, $99,800, close to something like that, within a few pennies, David, was paid to go to support public education. So we're paying for the takeover of our children's minds, and they're being taught, hey, you might want to go check out if you want to do a transgender surgery. You might be happier if you're a girl, or if you're a girl, you might be happier if you're a guy. And they're telling our kids what to do, and they're telling their kids to hate America and hate their parents, and we're being taught communist curriculums that they wrote, and we're not being taught the Constitution or our true history of our country. And that's how you take a country over. It's war. So we need to fight. And a lot of mama bears got involved during 2020 when they saw what their children were looking at online at the computer, and the third grade students were reading stories. One of them was called Farm Boy, a story about a young kid that had an entrepreneurial mind and started cutting grass and making money. And later they talk about he and this other boy were behind the bushes, and they were very explicit with the words they used about what they were doing to each other. And you talking about some moms going and getting involved in the school board, that was being stopped immediately with very angry mama bears fighting for their kids to protect their minds. So those kids are pulled out of the public schools. So we've got to end property tax in our state, because I'm not going to pay for the government to corrupt our children or our grandchildren's minds anymore. So don't charge me for that. I'll handle their education.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing that if you buy a property and if you're paying off the bank or if you own it, you're basically paying rent to the government so that they can take it and indoctrinate your kids. When we moved to Florida from Canada, we were very happy to be in a great district that had great schools. And then you see that schools are more or less capable of dealing with all types of students. And we are now homeschooling our third kid. Let me bring up a couple of questions here. I think we're going to get to a bunch of these. What would he do to reduce the national debt? Would he would he audit the Fed? You think you said you'd end the Fed. Would he restore the constitutional order of voting on declarations of war? So we got those. There was another one. We're going to get to all these. Thomas Massey's top donors are Islamists, and he wrote the bill to pull funding from our troops after they were attacked. Congress hasn't declared war since World War II, including Afghanistan. Well, that might be the problem, not the justification. In our locals community, Mark, we got a bunch of questions. What MAGA changes do you want to happen in the Senate? Filibuster. This one, I mean, it's neither. I don't think this is a deciding issue for anybody. But what's your position on ending the filibuster? I understand you don't particularly have a strong feeling about ending the filibuster.
No, I'm for ending it. Absolutely. The filibuster just gives our people in Congress a get out of jail free card. They get to hide and play the shell game, and we don't actually ever do anything. When the Democrats don't like something, they give a threat of filibuster, and just the talk of that pulls up that, well, now we got to have 60 to win, and we don't have that in Congress right now. And so it just sits on the table, and everybody goes home, and it's defunded like Homeland Security is. And it's just, I can't do that in my business. We got to make a decision. We might take a day or two, pray, get all our facts together, and bring in all of our team and talk about it, make sure we're going to make a good decision and pray over it. And then we got to make a decision because we got to get back to work and keep going. We can't close our store for 2 or 3 months,
Okay, good. No, then I misunderstood. So good, because I don't even understand what the filibuster is intended to preserve by way of procedure. But okay, so end the filibuster. Good. Dapper Dave says Mark absolutely needs to have this for every ad that he does until Election Day. Lindsey Graham, I go back to South Carolina. What is this? I'm asking them to send their sons and daughters over to the Middle East. I don't know if that's a direct quote. I don't want to get in trouble if that's not a direct quote. Free SC01. I've always thought the SC is from South Carolina. I am from South Carolina. Ask Mark this. What do you believe the founders would say is the greatest constitutional principle that modern Washington has abandoned?
That they've abandoned. I'd have to think on that one.
Let me sway you in a direction. Second Amendment, I understand you are a Second Amendment absolutist.
100%.
Okay. That might be the one where
shall not be infringed. Any questions? We have people in the State House fighting for constitutional carry. What a waste of taxpayers' money. We were granted that by our God. We were given unalienable rights. You can't take them from us. And if I need a gun to resist evil at that level, I get to have one.
All right, that's good. I mean, again, people are the only criticism people are going to have is, you're a Second Amendment absolutist, and then they're going to, pull up the Jeanine Pirro statement or the Kash Patel statement to say we seem to have people in the DOJ that are not even Second Amendment absolutists. Would you vote to end the Patriot Act? Asks Dread Robert.
Yes.
Good.
Because we knew that was a bad act bill when Bush came out with that. It was used against us when we had a tyrannical leader as the president, and he's told all MAGA believers, you're now considered terrorists. And he used it on us and showed us, if you mess with us, we'll put you in jail. And that's what they did.
And Dread Robert asks, I think we answered this one effectively. Will he vote to reduce or eliminate visas for foreign students? I think your answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Would you support recalls over term limits for accountability? Asks Jameson 2012.
I signed the United States term limits pledge. And I hate that we have to do that. When this country was first formed, our president and people in Congress went and they left the farm, left the family. They went and served a term or two, then they came back home. They weren't corrupt. They weren't making millions of dollars in the job. So they came on back home after they did their term of service. But till we get the corrupt people out, we're not going to get anything done. So for a time, I believe we have to have term limits. You know, Lindsey Graham ran on term limits, and he's been in there over 30 years, so he lied to us. So we've got to do something to help get these people out. We can't vote them out. In our state, we have open primaries. We don't have party registration. So on a Republican primary vote day, like June 9th is my primary coming up in June, we're going to have Democrats cross over and they'll vote for Lindsey Graham. That's one way he keeps getting elected.
Well, that's actually, so we're going to get into this as the final order. You're the primary candidates, Lindsey Graham, you, is Paul Dans also running?
He is. And
Patrick Herman.
Patrick Herman got into it too just recently.
You got 4. For a schnook Canadian like me, what's the threshold? Is it simple majority, or how do you win the primary?
With 51%.
Okay. What is
so that brings split off of votes, and it's probably going to force a runoff.
Not that I trust polling. I understand there's a lot of people out there, conservatives, Republicans, MAGA, who say, I will simply not vote, period, if Lindsey Graham is the option. What's the polling at right now between the 4 of you? Do you know?
Well, we've seen polling on the 3 of us. We've had some straw polls across the state. One was started in Myrtle Beach for 24 hours with a legitimate electronic poll on Facebook, and it stayed open. And about 996, I think, was the total that voted. I had 79% of the vote. Lindsay had 13, I believe, and Paul had 7. We did a straw poll after a Spartanburg County GOP event. There was 450 people at a plated dinner where all of the candidates of the governorship, the gubernatorial votes came. Paul Dans and I were there. Lindsay didn't show up. They had some people in Congress and the attorney general positions that ran. Then everybody filled their poll out and turned it in when they left, and they had the results in a couple of hours and posted it. And I won by over 50 votes in that poll that night. There was a lot of undecided still. And then we did a poll in Oconee County, and I had 73% of that poll, and Lindsay was second with 12 or 13, and Paul with 5. And so
but
those
the
are
risk
just straw polls, but it's an indication of something that's happening, you know.
But so do I understand correctly then, there's any formal registration? Any Democrat that wants to switch over and vote in the Republican primaries can do so?
They can vote in the primary. We have Democrats that are registered to vote too in the Democrat Party, but right now there's 4 Republicans.
Okay, no. So, and the question is this: I've had Paul Dans on the channel as well. He's also an amazing guy. Is there any discussion possibility that to coalesce to ensure that you defeat Lindsey Graham in the primaries?
I haven't discussed that with him. He came in the race late. He doesn't have any money. I put $5 million of my own money in it, and we have enough money to give a viable race here. We just finished a 3rd week of TV advertising, spending over $300,000. At the end of the 4th quarter, that's all he had in his campaign account was about $300,000. That's not a legitimate United States Senate run. And if he really is America first, and he's for the Republican Party, and he's really for taking Lindsay out, then as a good team player, he needs to do what he needs to do and step out of the race and support me.
A question I forgot to ask, I'm looking over here on our locals, Jarhead, ask, I know your position on this, the judges. I mean, one of the excuses that we've heard as to why there's been so little action from the DOJ is the blue slip process, that Trump can't get nominees or appointments in because of the blue slip process, activist judges that are suppressing Trump's agenda. What do you do with these activist judges on day one if you get in?
Well, it's time to impeach some of them and remove them. And Lindsay voted. It's funny. He put out another direct mail piece, David, saying how good he is and how he's for all the right judges and everything, when he voted for all of Obama's appointments and Biden's. And so, like when Trump first got in last year, one of the first things he did is wrote an executive order to eliminate transgender sexual surgeries on children. Mm-hmm. And Judge Herson, who Lindsay helped get into that position, reverse that. So we've got a lot of work to do there too, because our Department of Justice is corrupt. We've got the wrong judges in, and there's maybe criminal charges that can come up against these judges for what they're doing. When Trump sends a plane of illegal aliens and deports them with Tom Homan with ICE, and a Supreme Court judge says you need to turn that plane around and bring them back, I got a problem with that. There needs to be a Navy SEAL team kicking that judge's door in and bringing him in for questioning. That's a treasonous act.
You will not get me to disagree with that. It's got to happen sooner than later. Mark,
yeah,
you've invested $5 million of your own dollars. What is the anticipated budget or requirement for this primary race?
The majority of that money will go from now till June.
Okay.
And with all the TV and direct mail and texting we've got to do, we've already bought signs. We bought a Sprinter van. We wrapped it in a great looking graphic. We've been traveling in. It's in the shop right now. We put it on the road in June, and it has 20,000 miles on it. And our team has been traveling in that every day, going all over the state, presenting our platform and giving people hope and giving them a viable option to remove a flimsy, flip-flopping traitor in Lindsey Graham and bring back a true America First, conservative, God-fearing patriot. And that's me. And this is going to be the most exciting year in elections we've had in a long time. And this race to remove Lindsey Graham's happening. You can't stop it. And I want everybody to get on board and join the winning team, because America, it's goodbye, Lindsey, finally, and be a part of that. It's an exciting year.
Mark, do you have 5 or maybe 7 more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What I'm going to do is we're going to go raid the next show. This is lingo on Rumble. We're going to raid the next channel, but we're going to stay live here. And I've been told that Rumble has fixed the feature so that when I end now, it'll go to Rumble Premium and Local. So we're going to test that out. Right now, we're going to raid Redacted. So go and enjoy. Come over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. If you want to support Mark's efforts, you can take donations from anyone in America, correct?
Yes, absolutely. This is a U.S. Senate race, so that's good.
Okay, and not internationally, not so much, correct?
No, we don't want money from China or APAC.
What I was going to say is this: I'm going to get some more questions from our locals community. It's amazing. I mean, Godspeed, but we're going to get to some more questions here. What can people do? Where can they go? You got Mark Lynch for Senate, it's lynchforsenate.com is your website. You're on Twitter. I'll put all of these up in the pinned comment afterwards. What can people do proactively to help you win?
Well, we win it on our knees. So I appreciate all prayers. This is spiritual warfare. It's not Republican versus Democrat. It's Satan versus Jesus. And with God, we can do this thing. So let's get back and fight in the heavenly realm where the actual spiritual battle is taking place. Second, hey, it takes some money. I've got $5 million in. It's going to take a little more than that. Pray, ask God what He would have you give, and we appreciate anything you can donate to the campaign. You can go to lynchforsenate.com and go to the volunteer tab and sign up to volunteer. We need door knocking teams, people putting signs out, and people just, hey, we've all got one of these things, cell phones, and we've got a contact list on there. We can start in the A's and start calling all of our friends at night for 30 minutes or an hour, or whatever time you have, or during the day, and giving them your testimony and introduce me to them and tell them where to go and tell them to help. This is the year, but it takes all of us, and it's a fight, because when we get in, it'll be one of the biggest Doge experiments in America, because trillions of dollars of waste, abuse, and fraud and endless wars will come to an end. So all hell's going to come up against this, but I'm God's child, and the enemy can't touch me unless I give him legal rights to. But God's prepared for a guy like me to come in and make a difference, and He stands with us, and He's the owner of our campaign, and it's time. It's happening in 2026.
Well, I'll say it from your mouth to God's ears. We're going to update the stream. It's going to change nothing on our end. We'll get some more questions for you, but now I think I can do it. If I've updated the stream,